So the first thing I'm going to do is start with a little bit of a tone across the whole panel here. The reason I do this is to immediately get rid of all the white. Just some sort of a middle ground color. We're mostly talking today about tonal value, which has to do with the amount of lightness and darkness that we're perceiving. And so if we start with more of a middle ground, we can more easily see the relationship between light and dark. If we start with just a white panel, there's so much glaring white that it's hard to judge the relationships properly. So I just give it a bit of a neutral, just a little bit of color, a little bit of a gray, so I can kind of begin with something in the middle rather than just starting with all bright. Now I'm looking at my egg here. You can do this initial drawing stage in pencil, charcoal. However, in this case, I find it just as simple to begin with paint. It's very versatile, and I'm using oil paint, so it's extremely easy to move and manipulate, erase, add, as you see fit. And I'll just begin with a drawing is nothing more than putting things in the right place. So I'm putting the form and the cast shadow, finding loosely the right place for things, giving them a shape. Begins with line, but it ends with shape. So what I want to talk about in particular in this demonstration, it's a very simple still life of a curved object. And I want to talk about the primary elements of light falling on a curved object when we're dealing with a primary light source. So in this case, I have a strong light coming from the left, striking the object, the egg, most notably right at this point, bouncing off. And then there's ambient light from the room, other light sources, which form reflective light, hitting the table and coming back and influencing this portion of the object. So I want to divide the light into distinct areas. And this primarily holds true anytime there's a single light source with minimal ambient light. The primary light source comes across, and where it strikes directly with the object, this area is known as the highlight. This is the place of the lightest light. So I'm going to go ahead and give that the lightest light I have, which is pure white on my palette. Pure titanium white. Everything around it will be light, but not quite as light as the highlight. The next thing I like to do is determine where the light part of the object turns into the dark part of the object. Now if you can see from the photograph I took of this egg, you can envision a line somewhat like this. It's like a boundary. From here, the object is lit, and beyond this line, the object is in shadow. And just beyond where that line is generally the darkest part of the shadow. Very little light hits this area. However, ambient light from the room bounces off the table from various places and up into the egg. And forms what we call a reflected light. Into the lower portion of the egg. So this part becomes a tad bit lighter. Next, we have the area of the table which is blocked. Light is blocked from the table by the egg, forming what we call a cast shadow underneath. And these cast shadows are very important in a still life painting. They help define the shape of the actual form you're painting. And they form quite interesting shapes, I think, in their own right. You'll notice that they're darkest right under the object, and as they move away from the object, they become a little lighter as more light from the room infuses that cast shadow and causes it to be a tad bit lighter toward the edge. And also a little softer around the edge. Let me just fill in a bit of the light side of the egg here. It's still quite light, but not quite as light as that highlight. We've got to make sure that highlight stays the brightest part of the whole thing. There we go. So let's review once again. Highlight, light side, dark side, reflected light, cast shadow. Those are the main elements of any curved object in a still life. But let's not forget the surrounding areas too. In order for this light area to feel light, we need to be sure that what's surrounding it is a bit darker. That way we can really see the contrast between the light and what's back there. Now, I've loosely laid this out, but depending on your taste, you can smooth out these lines a little bit, make them a little softer, but the principles remain the same.